What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of The Lawyer You Know, a Sunday special here. There were just way too many questions and comments on this Jay-Z and Diddy civil lawsuit dismissal that I had to take to YouTube to explain the possibilities of what could have happened and what seemingly absolutely did not happen, which is everybody's first thought on this case. And I decided to do it live so I could answer your questions. So make sure you guys hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Let's get into it. So my favorite thing from Twitter this weekend was, duh, it was a settlement. Duh, she was paid off. Duh, why are you so shocked and surprised by this? Well, that's because there's a lot of context that would lead us to believe she was not, in fact, paid off and that there was not, in fact, a settlement. Doesn't mean that's the case. And we'll talk about different ways they could have put a settlement together to get this result. And we'll talk about the different potential reasons Tony Buzbee and his client filed this notice of dismissal. Before we even read the dismissal, I wanted to make sure everybody understood what case we're talking about. This is the civil lawsuit where somebody accused Jay-Z and P. Diddy, among other defendants, of horrible wrongdoing at a VMA after party / freak off type of event. This is not the criminal case against Diddy, and this is not the only civil case against Diddy. It's, to my knowledge, the only civil case that has named Jay-Z as a defendant, where Alex Spiro has come out firing against Tony Buzbee, big plaintiff's lawyer, big defense lawyer, obviously, big fight in the media. We broke down Spiro's explanation of the evidence in the presser that he held that was quite good and maybe had something to do with this dismissal, but we'll talk about whether or not that's the case. And we will talk about the rule that they cite and what we could potentially learn from that. So we're going to read this together. We're going to talk about it. I was going to record this. I just got home from Tallahassee. I just got a workout done. So if you see sweat dripping off my face, that's why I'm not too nervous about this video, maybe a little bit. But there were just so many questions and comments on Twitter that I feel like we had to break this down a little bit more. Okay. So, and some good questions are coming in, and I will try to star some. I am on my own. John and Kelsey doing their own thing today. So I will get to as many questions as I possibly can. So, notice of voluntary dismissal pursuant to Rule 41A1AI of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. Pursuant to Rule 41A1AI, which is the rule we're going to read together, of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, plaintiff Jane Doe, remember, she's still Jane Doe at this point, by and through her undersigned counsel, hereby gives notice that the above captioned action is voluntarily dismissed with prejudice. Voluntarily dismissed, meaning nobody forced her to dismiss this case. And when we read the rule, you'll understand a little bit more about that. That's number one. Number two, with prejudice. So there are two ways you can dismiss cases: without prejudice, which means you can refile for a number of different reasons. Sometimes you put a wrong number on the complaint. You had to fix a fact. The judge can dismiss it because of failure to state a cause of action. Then you can refile. The judge will usually dismiss it without prejudice. So you can come back and you can file it again. But if you dismiss it with prejudice, that means this case or this cause of action in this jurisdiction is over forever. This plaintiff can never sue under this cause of action, these facts in this jurisdiction ever again. Her one bite at the apple is gone, unless, of course, which we'll talk about later, there's some kind of malpractice or wrongdoing by her attorney where the court says this screwed the client. We've got to allow her to refile this. Or all these things are just bouncing around in my head right now. So if there was some kind of malpractice, you can either, subvert this and go and file again. Or if courts feel like that's too unfair to the defendant because they fought it and they won this time, sometimes the malpractice claim against your lawyer becomes what I could have gotten from Jay-Z. So if I would have gone forward, if I would have won this case and got $5 million, now I'm going to sue you, Mr. Lawyer, that committed malpractice by dismissing this, ruining my one bite at the apple. Okay? So when we get to a situation like this and we see that it's dismissed with prejudice, it means it's over. Now, the last sentence says, counsel for plaintiff has discussed this matter with the counsel for each defendant who acknowledge and consent to this submission. That's also an interesting line for me. Okay? There's a lot of different things we're going to look at here. So first, the most obvious question And obviously, what I think happens in most cases, 90+% of cases, is they settle. And after you settle, guess what? You file something just like this, a voluntary dismissal with prejudice. This case is over, Judge. No more questions need to be asked. We got what we wanted. Civil justice has done what it can, and that's give us money. Civil justice can't make this not happen. We can't go back in time. We can't go back to the future. So the case ends. We don't have to waste any more time and money on it. We don't have to waste any more judicial resources either. So obviously that's the first thought. And that would not make this the most shocking dismissal of the very short-lived 2025 so far. So let's talk about why I don't think that's what happened. Almost immediately, we start to get some quotes here. And I saw them all over the place, but this is where I saw them first. Milagro says, Alex Spiro, who is Jay-Z's lawyer, says Jay-Z did not settle or pay 1 cent. And here's his quote. The false case against Jay-Z that never should have been brought, which is what he said the whole time, has been dismissed with prejudice. By standing up in the face of heinous and false allegations, Jay has done what few can. He pushed back. He never settled. He never settled. He never paid 1 red penny. He triumphed and cleared his name. Now let's look at Jay-Z's statement. Today is a victory. The frivolous, fictitious, and appalling allegations have been dismissed. This civil suit was without merit and never going anywhere. The fictional tale they created was laughable, if not for the seriousness of the claims. I would not wish this experience on anyone. The trauma that my wife, my children, loved ones, and I have endured can never be dismissed. And by the way, we may talk about this in a little bit. This 1-800 lawyer gets to file a suit hiding behind Jane Doe. And when they quickly realize that the money grab is going to fail, they get to walk away with no repercussions. The system has failed. The court must protect victims, of course. While with the same ethical responsibility, the courts must protect the innocent from being accused without a shred of evidence. May truth prevail for all victims and those falsely accused equally. Now, it might not come as a surprise to you, but I love that quote. I think that was very well said and very well put together. So let's discuss. A lot of people think this is, something nefarious is going on. She was still paid. That's what we think happened. Okay. I get it. And let's talk about how that could be possible. How could what Jay-Z and his lawyer be true and them have settled or potentially paid off Jane Doe? So number one, there are rules of ethics, and Alex Spiro, while he's zealous and loud and boisterous, especially in the public eye, in defending his clients, he is not going to boldface lie, because that is going to get you in a situation where you could get disbarred. You could lose your license. You could lose the ability to practice law, which is how he makes his living, how he feeds his family, how he has risen to where he has risen to. So I would be very, very shocked. Now, say stuff, make accusations, yell at each other, come at Tony Busby, sure. But would he lie and say that he, Jay-Z, has not paid her 1 red cent? So now we're going to go back for a second and take a look at the dismissal. And we see that the defendants in this case are Sean Combs, who's Diddy, a bunch of his LLCs and companies, Bad Boy Productions, Bad Boy Books Holdings, Bad Boy Records, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So he says Jay-Z, did not pay Jane Doe 1 red cent. So is there a world in which it's possible that Diddy paid this victim? That one of Diddy's companies or organizations paid a victim? Or maybe through one of Jay-Z's companies, they paid the victim? I guess that's possible. Okay. I guess that's possible, but I still think that that would be an unethical comment by Alex Spiro. While technically true, it could technically be true, I still think that would be unethical and that would be misleading and that would be a fraudulent misrepresentation of the facts. Now, here's another reason why I don't think that's true. Do we really think Tony Buzbee is going to sit idly by and let them make these comments? From every article I read, everywhere on social media I could find, I looked, and all I found for Tony Buzbee was no comment. Which to me speaks kind of loudly. Because this dismissal and these comments matter. They matter to the other victims, to the alleged victims that end up being real victims eventually if their claims are proven in court. It matters to the slew of other civil cases he has filed with his firm and other victims have filed against P. Diddy and other, big, powerful celebrities that may be true. This tarnishes some of their claims. This makes life more difficult. I know that to be true. These types of claims are thrown into our faces. Look at this money grab. That's what this person's doing. That's what that person's doing when you represent victims in cases like this. I bet the United States Attorney's Office is rolling their eyes a bit at this. Like, come on, can you guys just pick the victims you can actually prove? It could affect the criminal case. I would be shocked. I think the U.S. Attorney's Office has done a much deeper dive and a much more thorough investigation. If you remember, Tony Buzbee did start to back off this victim a little bit and say, somebody else reviewed and vetted this claim. So he already did kind of back off it a bit. Additionally, why I think it is unlikely that a settlement occurred. This is the most illogical timing for Jay-Z to pay. If you were going to pay, you pay before the lawsuit becomes public and all of this explodes on you, which is exactly what happened to him. You pay after you've had some time to dig deeper, fight the PR battle, see if you think you can win, see if you can get the case dismissed, see if you can get a summary judgment motion granted. If you lose all of that, then maybe you pay. But to pay a couple months after the lawsuit, after claiming your innocence, and after so publicly going out and saying you didn't pay, to me is just foolish. I don't see that happening. I really don't see that happening. It's possible, but I don't see it happening. So why would Tony Buzbee dismiss this lawsuit and his client dismiss this lawsuit at this point? Well, there's a couple of reasons. There were some deadlines coming up, one of which I believe was Tony Buzbee's pro hoc vice into New York and to be able to practice in New York. And from my perspective, I would be shocked if that was the nexus for this settlement for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's not that difficult to get pro hoc in. Maybe if you have a big personality and they can point to some things that, they didn't like that you did in other jurisdictions, fine. But even if he wasn't going to represent her, she could have gotten another lawyer. Another firm involved in all of this could have been lead counsel, not Tony Buzbee. So that's not that big of a deal. Or he could have dismissed it without prejudice. She could have gotten another lawyer and filed it again. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The two best reasons and most logical reasons are either Buzbee was looking at the case from Spiro's point of view, like we broke down at length in a video when we watched everything Spiro had to say about this case, and he just thought factually it was a weak case, and factually they may lose. That's possible. And I'm going to read here the last sentence again. Counsel for plaintiffs have discussed this matter with counsel for each defendant who acknowledge and consent to this submission. So obviously they consent to this submission, right? That means they win, basically. But number two, it could mean that a non-monetary settlement was made, something like, if we dismiss this lawsuit, you guys agree that you will not come after Jane Doe. You won't try to ruin her life. You won't sue her for defamation. You let her go back into, her normal life, whatever it may be. Because she still stands by her claims, but factually, we don't think we can prove them. Okay? That's one. And Christy just said, do you think Jay-Z will press charges against her? I don't know. But maybe something like that happened in this case. Pam said, will they be charged criminally? Diddy's already charged criminally. There ain't no way the feds are going to pick up this victim and push forward with criminal charges, in my opinion. Lastly, there were some technical issues with the case, with certain claims under certain New York City jurisdiction and certain holes in the victim's story. Could she actually prove this happened within New York City? And so maybe even if they believed her factually and they believed they could prove the claims, no matter how strong your case is, if there's a jurisdictional bar or a technical bar and you're going to go lose, that could be a reason to dismiss it now. So I would think it would have to do something with the strength of the case, either factually speaking or legally speaking. To me, that is the only way or reason I could possibly see for a plaintiff to dismiss this. Now, a lot of questions came in and said, Tony Busby did this to protect Tony Busby. And you guys all heard when I read the line about this 1-800-lawyer gets to do this behind a shield of Jane Doe. And we know that Jay-Z is suing Tony Busby for this, among other things around this case and extortion and things like that. Will he win? I don't know. I would be surprised, but this surprised me, right? But we know that's going on in the background. We know they're fighting Busby hasn't been admitted to New York. We know they're saying there are factual issues and Busby didn't do a deep enough dive. That's everything Jay-Z and his team have been alleging. So, to me, the people that are asking, did Tony Busby do this to protect Tony Busby? The answer better be no. Because if Tony Busby did this to protect Tony Busby, what he should have done is withdrawn from the case or dismissed it without prejudice, allowing her to get another lawyer. To dismiss it with prejudice, I would be, again, surprised and shocked and disappointed in any lawyer that would do this to his client to protect himself. Because if he did, again, then we bring into play, to me, a malpractice situation where the malpractice committed by Tony Busby blew this client and alleged victim's chance of going forward and getting civil justice. If that's what happened. If there weren't any issues in her case and instead he wanted to just protect himself. I'm not being facetious at all. This shocked me. With all the public push, all the lawsuits coming out, the trickling out of celebrity A, you're going to know there's some huge names, the teasing, and then it hits. And the fights, and they push forward. And it seemed like the federal judge was like, I'm going to give them the chance to tell their story. Because I'll just tell you, it feels like it's got to be more than weak facts. It feels like it's got to be more because a lot of cases go forward with weak facts. And sadly, some cases even get money. Frivolous lawsuits sometimes result in settlements, even with weak facts. So I would be a little surprised if this case was dismissed just because of some weak facts. It feels more like a legal issue, a technicality, or something bigger going on. So let's take a look at that federal rule here that they cite. Just as a little context before we go. It's going to be a quick video. We're about done. So dismissal of actions by the plaintiff with a court order. It was A1A1. So without a court order, subject to these rules and any applicable federal statute, the plaintiff may dismiss an action without a court order. How do they do that? A notice of dismissal before the opposing party serves either an answer or a motion for summary judgment. What that means is we are so early in this case that while we've seen some explosion, we've seen some public comments, we've seen some stuff happen, but it is so early that this is one of the situations where the court's like, yeah, I guess nothing's happened. You can dismiss it. Because many times, especially if there's a settlement in federal court, you have to get a court order or court approval. But not in this scenario. It's so early. It's so soon. Boom. Gone. It's over, and you don't have to involve the court. Now, you may not know that, but in many civil cases in federal court, you must get court approval for settlements. A lot of the Fair Labor Standards Act, like unpaid wages or unpaid overtime claims that I've handled, the class action lawsuits I've handled that have been in federal court as one of the lawyers, usually we refer that up, but I handled a couple fee hearings with them where we argued what our fees should be based on the class action settlement. We have to do that. We have to go to court. We have to explain how we got to this settlement. And you may ask, why do we do that? I thought this stuff was supposed to be confidential. Well, you're right, but the courts usually do it to protect the client. That it's not some money grab for the lawyer, that the client's not getting screwed, and that this settlement doesn't actually hurt them and help the lawyer. That's why the court, especially federal court, many times in state court, in my jurisdiction, I'll say like minor settlements, they all have to be approved, right? We got to protect minors. But not when it's a situation like this, which again is more evidence that there was no settlement. I don't know. I don't know the answer. But it certainly seems like all the context is pointed towards no monetary settlement with 1 red cent going from Jay-Z to this victim. And that's wild to me. So in the comment section, let's take a second because I see a bunch of people throwing out other cases. There's new stuff in Lively Baldoni. There's new stuff in Karen Reed. And there's stuff going on in the ASAP Rocky trial, which is just ending. Not a ton of you had questions about that before. That's why I kind of stopped doing trial updates. I've kept watching, but some people are asking for updates now. So first on the Karen Reed front, the podcast Monday morning, 8 a.m. We haven't done our teaser yet. We usually do our teaser on Sunday night, but the teaser's coming later, and I brought my dad on to look at some of the Karen Reed documents with me. Oh, and I almost had to like put my hand on my head a couple times and be like, oh, the people are going to love that you said that, Dad. I said that a couple times. Elizabeth then said, this title felt a little clickbaity, Pete. Not feeling shocked or like this is the most shocking dismissal civil lawsuit that didn't have evidence, perhaps not shocked. And this to me tells me that I don't think people fully understand what happened here. That a civil lawsuit with this much publicity and this much pre-trial and pre-filing push for money getting dismissed with prejudice this quickly with all the other stuff going around and all the momentum behind victims of Diddy, it is shocking. And I said of 2025, right? Not of all time, but it literally was to me. And I will tell you, if you go look on Twitter, the shock runs through people trying to figure out why this happened. And I don't think it's as simple as, oh, the case wasn't that good. Just my opinion. Just my opinion. What was I going to say? Oh, so yeah, my dad and I are going to talk about Karen Reed. There's more happening on Karen Reed. So let me know what you are most interested in. Do you want an ASAP Rocky update with that trial? We're waiting on a verdict on that trial. Closing arguments are done. The lawyers keep fighting with each other. The Karen Reed stuff, there's a juror interview. There's more documents that dropped. If you want more of that, let me know. And I already forgot what the other one was. Oh, Blake Lively. I saw some people talking about Blake Lively stuff happening. Lewin v. Taco is crazy. It is. It is. So wild. So wild. By the way, most of my titles either are a collaborative effort by the whole team that puts together the tiles and the titles. We do want people to come watch, but it usually is kind of like my first thought. What's my first thought? I was like, this shocked me. It's legitimately shocked me. And I like to talk about it first on Twitter sometimes. And if nobody has questions, then it can be left on Twitter by one comment. But if there's tons of questions, sometimes I got to dig a little deeper with a video. All right. I'm going to check the comments later, but you guys go ahead and let me know in the live chat and the comments what you're most interested in. I see mostly Karen Reed. So get ready for the podcast, 8 a.m. Make sure you guys subscribe, reminder bell, hit. But it's an interesting one. It's a really interesting one to see what my dad has to say about that case and what's going on. Oh, Busby filed a few dismissals on Diddy cases on Friday. See, now this is the first time I'm seeing this, Queen Brielle. I got to check those out. Something's in the water, right? This many. See, this is the problem. And this is also why this is so shocking. A lawyer should not file and then 2 months later dismiss a lawsuit with prejudice. We have time to review and vet these cases as plaintiffs' lawyers. We go through, we get documentation, we talk to witnesses. We try to understand what's going on. So this is not a normal thing to have cases filed and dismissed this quickly. Kathy, I was shocked when I saw it on the news and was super happy you covered it. Thank you, Kathy. And no hate to anybody that didn't think it was shocking. I'm just telling you, from my perspective, For somebody who does this, right? I have never done this in my career. I'll just tell you. I have never in my career, without a settlement, filed a case and dismissed it with prejudice within 2 months or 3 months or 5 months or ever. Really ever. I don't think I've ever done it. Raven, smash that like button. Yes. Hit the like button because we're out of here. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I love you all. Thank you for coming to hang out on short notice. I'll be with you again on Monday morning and maybe more because there's a lot going on. And when there's a lot of content, I'd like to hit as much of it as I can. You know, sometimes there's slow, boring stuff. No need to do a video. But when there's stuff that's interesting to talk about, I love talking about it with you guys. And I love to hear your comments, your questions, even when you disagree with me, even when you think my title's clickbaity, because I want to hear when you think that, because that means it's like, not that surprising, which means you disagree with me, right? If I think it's shocking and you don't, it means we disagree. And I want to know why. Why are you not surprised by this, right? And you guys bring it. So I appreciate that as always. That's all we got. Till next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.